What was your life like when you were 17 years old? Chances are you were probably still in high school, unlike this guy. Instead, he's becoming the best wide receiver in college football.
17 years old and on top of the world!
I'm of course talking about Ryan Williams, the man who skipped his senior year of high school and is now the best wide receiver for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But how did he even get to this point? Well, there are multiple factors. Let's start off with his high school career. Williams is a product of Saraland High School, which is located just outside of Mobile, Alabama. And while Saraland had been solid a few years prior, Williams was one of the guys to help take them to the next level. While he didn't do much his freshman year, colleges had already started to take notice of this guy. Towards the end of his freshman season, Williams would receive his first offer from West Virginia. From that point onward, he would start receiving offers left and right, including schools like Florida State, Michigan, and Tennessee. But what about the in-state schools? Why hadn't Alabama or Auburn offered this guy yet? Well, that would change soon enough. Williams would attend the University of Alabama football camp in the summer of 2022. It was at this camp where he would go against other big recruits who were trying to get an offer from Alabama. His performance at the camp was so impressive that the Crimson Tide would give him an offer the same day that the camp ended. But what about Auburn? Don't worry, they wouldn't be too far behind, as the Tigers would offer Williams at the beginning of his sophomore season. Speaking of his sophomore season, Williams was about to put the entire college football nation on notice during the season. Every week it seemed like he was going off. Not only was Williams killing it at the wide receiver position where he'd have over 1,600 yards and 24 touchdowns, but he was also getting it done at running back where he had 700 yards and 15 touchdowns. That's over 2,300 yards and 39 touchdowns in just one season. I don't care what state you're playing high school football in, that's impressive. This impressive season by Williams would also help Saraland win their first state title in school history. On top of that, he was now a 5-star prospect. After this impressive season, schools from around the country would begin to offer him, including Texas, Georgia, USC, Notre Dame, Penn State, Oregon, and LSU. Despite these offers though, Williams remained committed to Alabama. But what made Ryan Williams such an eye-opening prospect? Well, as you can see in the film, he's very explosive. But on top of that, he's also very instinctive and just has that competitive mindset that just comes natural to great players. While his junior season wasn't quite as good as his sophomore season, it was no slouch by any means. He'd have over 1,300 yards receiving, 250 yards rushing, and 26 total touchdowns. But the biggest thing for Williams' junior year would not happen while he was playing on the field, but instead when he was on the field to watch the biggest sporting event in the state of Alabama, the Iron Bowl. Not only was Williams watching the Iron Bowl, but he was also on an unofficial visit for Auburn. In fact, during a recent interview, Williams said that the visit was going so well that if Auburn won the game, he would commit right there on Jordan Hare on the 50-yard line. As the game went on, Auburn looked to be in control. Not only were they about to steal one of the biggest recruits from their biggest rival, but they were about to upset him too. Then, this play happened.
Near corner, it's caught! Touchdown, Alabama!
Remember how I said there are multiple factors for Williams playing at Alabama? Well, this was the other factor. The impossible had happened. Alabama had managed to convert on what seemed like the impossible play to win the Iron Bowl. And with that, it seemed like it was going to be impossible for anyone to steal Ryan Williams from Alabama. But then, something else happened.
We're following breaking news in college football right now. ESPN is reporting that Alabama football coach Nick Saban is retiring after 17 seasons with the Crimson Tide.
The time had finally come for the GOAT Nick Saban to call it quits. The college football world was in shock. Nobody thought this could possibly happen. And with Saban leaving came the decommits, including Ryan Williams. Hours after Saban announced his retirement, Williams announced his decommitment from Alabama so he could reconsider his options. In the meantime, Alabama went out and hired a young up-and-coming coach, Kalen DeBoer, who had just led Washington to the national title game that season. And with that great hire, it would not take long for Alabama to get Ryan Williams to recommit to playing for the Crimson Tide. And can you blame Williams? DeBoer had just turned wide receivers Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk into first and second round draft picks in the 2024 NFL Draft. In another shocking turn of events, Williams would reclassify with the class of 2024. That's right, he skipped his senior season of high school football so he could get into college and play early. He would enroll in May of 2024 at the University of Alabama. As Alabama was going through their summer practice, Ryan Williams was turning heads. His teammate and starting defensive back Malachi Moore would call his performances at practice shocking. You also have to remember that he had just started practicing for Alabama and did not get to go through spring ball like a lot of the other freshmen did. Despite these impressive practices, Williams was still only a backup wide receiver for Alabama's first game against Western Kentucky. Even so, he would still put the college football world on notice in his first game. Even though Williams would only have 2 catches, they would both go for explosive touchdowns. And he would also have 139 yards. Not bad for your first game. And while this was an impressive start, he still had some work to do to become the starter. In Alabama's next game, they were struggling with the South Florida Bulls for most of the game. This was very shocking considering that Alabama had come into this game as a 30.5 point favorite. And with less than 6 minutes to go, the Tide were only up 21-16. They needed a play from someone to help break the game open, and that's exactly what Ryan Williams would provide.
Gets it out quickly, goes to Williams. Ryan Williams! Look at this kid! 17 years old and on top of the world!
This touchdown would help break the game open and Alabama would go on to win 42-16. That play by Williams turned heads around the country. In addition, it would help promote him to a starting wide receiver role. And don't worry, Williams would show that he deserved that starting role in Alabama's next game at Wisconsin. Williams would have 4 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown. Now, don't get me wrong. What Williams had done through his first 3 games of his college career was impressive, especially for being just 17. But how would he do in his first SEC game? And not just any SEC game, it would be against the number 2 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, a team that had won 2 of the last 3 national championships, with an impressive defense each of those last 3 years. Would this moment be too big for Ryan Williams? Well, to start the game, Williams would make the first catch of the game for 8 yards on the way to an Alabama touchdown. The next drive, he would make another 21-yard catch that would help lead to another Alabama touchdown and put them up 14-0. Another 7-yard catch by Williams would help jumpstart another touchdown drive that would put Alabama up 28-0. So while he wasn't dominating the game, he was definitely making an impact while Alabama looked to be in control. But then something happened. Georgia started to come back. After scoring another touchdown and a 2-point conversion, Georgia would be trailing just 30-15. The Alabama offense had not done much in the second half and needed a spark, and Williams would give them that their very next drive.
Goes down the middle, Williams bobbled and caught!
A very impressive bobbling catch that would help lead to an Alabama field goal. But then, the Alabama offense would go back to doing nothing, and Georgia would continue to work their way back into the game, scoring touchdown after touchdown, and eventually...
Can you believe it? Georgia has the lead!
Georgia had done the unthinkable, coming back from a 28-0 deficit to take the lead in Tuscaloosa. Say what you want about Saban being gone, but this should still not happen at Alabama. Alabama still has elite players and a proven coach. Alabama had lost all momentum and needed another spark with 2 minutes to go. Who would give it to them? Well, I think you know the answer.
Looking for Williams, comes back, makes the catch.
Touchdown Alabama, they answer in one play!
The 17-year-old had done it again. Not only was it a nice catch, but the moves to stay on his feet and get into the end zone were also insane. Williams would give the Tide the lead for good as they would go on to win 41-34. With this performance, Williams would become a superstar in college football, and this was arguably his best game to date, with 6 catches, 177 yards, and a touchdown. So now the real question is this a big deal that he's doing this at just 17? Well, yes. I know you guys are tired about hearing that this guy is just 17 years old, but that's a big deal. We've never seen anyone dominate in college football at this young of an age. Whether it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing or the start of a new trend, this is something special. And the thing is, Williams is just going to get better. Imagine what he'll be doing by his junior year. Not to mention, he'll probably become the youngest player drafted in NFL history. Oh, and I know this video is coming out after the Alabama loss to Vanderbilt, but don't blame Ryan Williams. He was the reason they almost came back.
Down the sideline, it is caught by Williams. He springs free.